what we left off last time. We're talking about in the mantra. Let's get back to the mantra of compassion. We have talked up to Tadyatta Om Avalokitisvara Avaloki Karanti Eherehe Mahabuddhisadava Sava Sava Mala Mala. Mala Mala. When we come to Mala Mala, Mala Mala, metaphorically, it means garbage, and actually give us the connotation that mental afflictions. Now, when we talk about mental afflictions last time, we also talk about how do we understand our own mind. And we also cover as to the study of the Buddhist teaching is primarily the study of one's mind. You have to understand your mind. You have to understand how every thought arises and how every thought is carried volitionally into action. So we have to understand the importance of the mind. How mental afflictions come up, how jealousy come up, hatred, depression, greediness, craving, ill wills. How do those mental afflictions come up? How do we overcome them? Remember in the Diamond Sutra, the first question asked by Subhuti, you still remember this question asked by Subhuti to the Buddha, and that becomes the second chapter, or the second chapter of the whole Diamond Sutra. Is the question is like this: gentlemen of merit and ladies of merit, when they already have big vows to attain Anuttara Samya Sambuddhi, in other words, when they already have made up their mind that they will tread the path of the sages to go on the purification path or the path of enlightenment, how do they keep their mind, their Bodhi mind, always maintain intact going onto that path? And when they sidetrack, how do they turn it back to the authentic, to the true path? In other words, when it becomes bad, when our mind goes astray, then how do we get it back onto that path of purification? Remember, that is the question. So we really have to understand our mind. And when we talk about mind, we go into detail. I don't know, maybe I spent about 4 or 5 times to study this, because this is really significant, especially for people who have never heard the Buddhist teaching. They thought the Buddhist teaching is about a God, about worshiping Buddha, and Buddha will give you blessings, about acquisitions from Buddha, want to acquire wealth, fame, reputation, longevity, good health. You got everything from Buddha. That's not the objective of studying the Buddhist teaching. The objective of studying Buddhist teaching is to understand how your mind works, and how if you understand yourself, then you understand others. So it is primarily creating not just internal understanding, it's a mutual understanding. So when we talk about consciousness, doing a very fast recap, which helps in most cases, and the mind, if we can break it down into consciousnesses, contain 8 consciousnesses. 6 is the superficial, the surface mind, the surface consciousnesses, and the other 2 is the subconscious minds. The first is visual consciousness. And your eyes corresponds to objects, to all matters. Auditory consciousness, the hearing consciousness. The ears corresponds to sound. Olfactory consciousness, which is the smelling consciousness. And gustatory consciousness, which is the tasting consciousness. And the tactile consciousness, which is the touching consciousness. And these 5 are nothing but yourself. You're not studying the consciousness of other people. All these are nothing but yourself. Problem comes from misconception of your senses in your interaction with the outside world. That's why we need to study them. Other than these 5 consciousnesses, there's also the manager that manages the senses. That is the mano consciousness. the thinking consciousness, the consciousness of discernment, the consciousness of analysis, the consciousness of going back to the archives for the past experiences and projections for the futures. This is the 6 conscious minds, the surface minds. And then we ask also, are these enough? I mean, those are the minds. Well, they are just the surface minds. Because questions comes as to, how can I remember all my past experiences? How do my memories get stored? And how come I can discern this is mine, this is yours? And how come people exercise their judgment with self-centeredness? How come some people act with altruistic attitude and some people act with solipsistic attitude, egoistic attitude? Because there are 2 other consciousnesses that dominate the mind. The one is the manas consciousness, which is the mind of self-attachment. You always recognize your own ego as yourself. And then there's another one, which is the significant consciousness, which is the alaya consciousness, and that is a storage consciousness, which store all the information of the past, of the present. So that's the whole set of the mind structure. Scientists, psychologists, and philosophers, they break it down to the left mind and the right mind. And from scientific journals, scientists and psychologists and philosophers, they claim that they only study not even 10% of how the mind functions. In other words, there's still a lot of inscrutable, uncovered areas of the studies in the mind. Now this is what the Buddha was talking about 2,600 years ago. And of course, many philosophers later explore into what the Buddha was talking about. That's why we have Immanuel Kant, who talk about subliminal consciousness, which is a further exploration of the Buddhist teaching in the alaya consciousness and the manas consciousness. Given that, as a recap, let's carry on. When we have these 6 minds, which I already have dealt in detail, which you should remember, how come we should remember them? By understanding it, you know how to get rid of all the mental afflictions coming up. You know how to control yourself. You know how to purify yourself. You know how karma gets created. You know how to control your own destiny. You are the creator of your own destiny, not God. You create your own future by understanding yourself, accommodating yourself into the mutual understanding among people. All right, now, when these 8 consciousnesses function, they don't function alone. And in the sutras, they identify them as mind kings. In other words, there are a lot of kings. The alaya consciousness being the major kings, and all the other 7 consciousnesses are the minor kings. They are the kings. And kings have to be helped by ministers. And without ministers, how can the king get to work? How can the king get to govern the country? There's got to be ministers. And every minister is a position that control all the others, like a whole parliamentary structure, a constitutional structure. So one of these, so you have those local 8 kings. You also have 51 ministers helping all these consciousnesses to work. And they arise at the same time. Some of them arise at the same time, some of them arise subsequently, and we have gone through there are 51 of these. And we try to categorize them into 5 categories. And the first category we already have gone through, which we call the omnipotent factors, mental factors. Omni means all, always present. These mental factors, these mental functions are always present. Does not matter which consciousness is being exercised. Visual consciousness, auditory, all these consciousness, the omnipotent mental functions always work incessantly. What are these omnipotent mental functions? The first one is attention. The second one is contact. The third one is sensation. The fourth one is perception. The fifth one is volition. Imagine if you look at something, if you don't pay attention, you don't know what you're looking at. I'm looking at you, but I'm not paying attention to you. It appears I'm looking at you, but I don't know it's you. You're eating food, and you don't pay attention to the taste of the food. The tasting consciousness is not working. You don't know how the food tastes, even though if you're eating. So you have to, in order to create a consciousness of that particular function, you really have to pay attention. So attention, contact, of course you got to have eye contact with form, sound, ear contact with sound, and taste contact with food, and body contact with objects. So you got to have contact. You got to have a sensation. Is it pleasurable sensation, unpleasurable sensation, neutral sensation, indifferent sensation, perception? You really have to perceive it. Perceive it and get it back to the manager to discern it. The manager pull up the file to say, this is, according to this past experiences, this is red, this is green, this is white. Volition, it carries out into a thought. After all these things, it carries out into a thought in you. And look at this. I appreciate it. I don't appreciate it. I hate it. I love it. All these things become a volitional thought in your mind. It's working instantaneously. You may not even notice it. The second category, I call it objective contingent mental functions or specific mental functions. What are these? There are 5 in there. Desire, resolve, memory, concentration, and intelligence. These are the 5. Why do they call specific factors? Because sometimes they come up with the consciousness. These ministers sometimes work with the consciousness, and sometimes they don't work with the consciousness. And even if they work, some of them work with certain nature. Every thought we have, it is related to 3 natures: wholesome nature, unwholesome nature, or neutral nature. That embraces almost everything. A wholesome thought comes up, is wholesome, good thought, a thought of compassion, a thought of helpfulness, good thought, wholesome thought. There's also unwholesome thought, a thought of injury, a thought of negligence, a thought of foolishness, a thought of jealousy, a thought of hatred, unwholesome. These are the 2 extremes. In between is neutral, not unwholesome, not wholesome. So, specific mental functions, desire, resolve, memory, concentration, and intelligence. Why are they specific? Because sometimes they may be wholesome and may be unwholesome. What is an example of unwholesome objective contingent mental functions? Okay, say for example, I wanted to be a good person. I wanted to be a person of conscience. I wanted a person who's compassionate, who's helpful, who's good. So you have a desire to do something. That is desire. An objective. You want a desire to do something wholesome. On the other hand, you could have a desire to do something unwholesome. Desire can be wholesome and unwholesome. Resolve, that means you understand what you desire. You have an objective to pass the examination. You study the course. You resolve to study it, understand it. Memory, you remember everything in that course. Concentration, you won't be swayed into not taking the objective. You don't sway aside. You want to take that desire and you want to go straight ahead. No divergence. Intelligence, that means you have to have the intelligence to go ahead with desire, resolve, memory, and concentration. So, in your mind, it works, but you don't know about it. These specific mental functions, desire, resolve, memory, concentration, and intelligence, it works instantaneously. But have you geared it to the right path? Criminals also have this kind of contingent factors. Their desire is to do something criminal. They resolve, they understand what they're doing. They want, for example, they want to rob a bank. They resolve to rob millions of dollars. They understand the route that the security patrons take, how the car gets into a certain road. They study the map, they study everything. They study everything in detail. That's resolve. Memory, they put everything into a planning. Everybody remembers his positions, how to steal, how to rob. And the concentration, nobody can sway their thought. They want to do this so badly. They want money. Intelligence, they got to have the intelligence doing it. But the whole thing is gearing towards something bad, unwholesome. You understand what I mean? So it always works in our mind. Now that is, I already have stopped at that point. Now what are the third? So we have omnipotent factors, contingent factors. What are the third? The third is mental afflictions. These ministers are bad ministers. We always have these mental afflictions working with our consciousnesses. Now what are these mental afflictions? We need to know these mental afflictions so that we understand the enemies. We understand the bad ministers, then we can control the bad ministers. We understand the good ministers, then we can let the good ministers to exercise whatever they want. Freely exercise their will because they're good ministers. All right, what is these mental afflictions? These mental afflictions are craving. Craving, greediness without limit for things one likes or appreciates. Do you have that? Don't tell me you don't have that. You're craving. Some people want to be a millionaire. Some people want to, a big house, fame, reputation. They're aiming at only egoistic acquisition, craving. You have craving and you don't even know about it. That's the first. The second one is ill will. Ill will is a term that embraces all the negative feelings. It embraces, it composes of anger and hatred. It is the opposite of craving. It is a mental function of anger and hatred directed towards the things that one does not appreciate. You don't appreciate something, you create ill will, malice, maliciousness. That is the second one, ill will. The third is ignorance. Now, it is a self-delusion. Ignorance, it is a self-delusion. It contains a vast variety of mental afflictions, which is view of a composite self, extreme views, perverse views, attachment to one's views, and attachment to certain disciplines, to certain habits. Some thinking, if you constantly repeat it, it becomes habituated, it becomes a habit, it becomes a personality, it becomes a karma. So ignorance is a self-delusion of views that you maintain. Some people cannot change their views on something. This is a predisposition that you learned in this life, in your family when you were very young. You built up this kind of ignorance in yourself. So craving, ill will, and ignorance, these are the mental afflictions, and there are more, there's 26 of them. 5 omnipotent mental functions, 5 specific mental functions. These could be good, could be wholesome or unwholesome or neutral. But what I'm mentioning now, the 26 mental afflictions, these ministers, they are bad ministers. They are in you and me all the time. So we already have mentioned craving or greediness. We already have mentioned ill will. We already have mentioned ignorance. What is the fourth? The fourth, self-conceit, such as arrogance. We always have a superiority complex, and some people may have an inferiority complex. Some people are extrovert, some people are introvert, some people suffer from depressions. Lots of mental cases. Even arrogance and self-conceit, if you study psychology, it can be broken down into further details. Self-conceit, in a certain case, self-respect. You demand respect. You demand, in order to show that you demand respect, you're being arrogant. You have a big ego, a self-centeredness that you want to protect. If that protection is broken, you're going to be volitionally doing something to protect it, even at the risk of injury, or even at the risk of self-injury, which we call suicidal, committing suicide, to maintain that self-respect and arrogance. Oh, these things happen all the time. Flip to the Globe and Mail or the Vancouver Sun. How many? Well, if we mention all these mental afflictions, and if you take the trouble of copying it down, put it on the side of the newspaper, and you try to match the news with all these mental afflictions, sometimes you may find corresponding characteristics. Oh, the happening of this pertains to arrogance. The happening of this pertains to ignorance. The happenings of the occurrence of this pertains to ill will. This pertains to malice. Oh, this pertains to conscience. This pertains to compassion. Everything is unfolded in the newspaper sometimes, if you think about it. All right, but we mentioned self-conceit, which is the fourth. How about the fifth? Doubt, where one has misgivings about the validity of such principle as the law of cause and effect. They're very doubtful on the cause and effect, and very doubtful on what the Buddhist teaching about non-self, and very doubtful about yourself, doubt about other than yourself. What do you mean by doubtful about yourself? You're losing confidence. You don't believe in yourself. You want to do something, but you don't have the confidence. No, the doubt is on yourself internally. Not just doubtful of yourself, you're doubtful of others. Doubtful of the Buddhist teaching, doubtful of people's views. You always create doubt. You have doubts in your family, doubt about your husband, the unfaithfulness of your husband, or many things. Doubtful about many things. Doubtful about the teachers. That teacher is teaching meditation. Is it good? Is it right? No, he taught us a mantra. Well, I want to find out what is right. I want to Google it and find out if the pronunciation is right. And then to match different mantra pronunciations. Oh, this is not too far off. Okay, we accept that. Well, sometimes it's not just doubt, it's verification, a third-party verification, which is good. But if it's excessive, it becomes a mental affliction. Doubt can create a lot of troubles. If you're doubtful about your wife's loyalty, then you could perform many foolish things. Broken marriages. The cause of some broken marriages is because of doubts on the partner's concern. Anyway, that's doubt. This number 5. And number 6, incorrect views. This is, as I said, view of the composite self, extreme views and perverse views, all different views that you have. You cannot change them. Obstinacy. No matter what other people admonish you, you don't take it. This is what you maintain. If it's a good view, it's good, but if it's an obstinate, one-sided, perverted view, then it's going to hurt yourself. No faith, and then indolence, sluggishness, self-indulgence, depression, forgetfulness, distraction, agitation, incorrect cognition. So you have, just repeat it again for those who take notes, no faith, Indolence, that means you're always being lazy. You tend to be lazy in your thinking, in your action, in your speech. You may not know about it. We have a tendency to be lazy, to be indolent. Self-indulgence, you want to indulge in something that you shouldn't be. Okay, so the 5 plus no faith, indolence, self-indulgence, depression. This is a general term. People depressed, they lock themselves in a room and they get depressed for the whole day. Forgetfulness, distraction, cannot concentrate. Some people, they cannot concentrate. And that happens to many kids because so many parents come to the temple and ask for help. Oh, my kid cannot concentrate, always have distraction. He cannot sit down for 5 minutes. Some people, some kids cannot sit down for 1 minute. They have to move around. No concentration, distraction, agitation. They easily can get agitated. Incorrect cognition. You look at a flower and it's not a flower, it's a fruit, it's an apple. Incorrect cognition. And then there's also unscrupulousness. Unscrupulousness, that means you have no shame on what you're doing. No reflection on your own thoughts. You know it's wrong, but you don't take shame in it. You don't care. You don't care about, you don't have inner shame. You know it's wrong, but you're not shameful about it. It's good to be shameful sometimes, to be remorseful. And then another affliction is shamelessness. Shamelessness is, unscrupulousness is regarding yourself. In other words, you don't have that shame inside of you. You don't care about that. Shamelessness, on the other hand, is another mental affliction, which is you don't care about what people think of you. Because if you perform bad deeds, other people, the society will not accept you. That's not the society's norm. So that, for example, if you're raping, the society cannot accept that norm. It's not right to be hurting others. But you yourself, you don't have that shame, your shamelessness. You don't care about what the society think. There's on others. So you see the difference? Unscrupulousness and shamelessness. And next, we go into a little fast now. Anger. At the same time, when you have consciousness created, you have anger in yourself. You may not realize it. Anger. Anger is really associated with hatred. You hate a society, you hate certain particular group of people. That's the reason why they have genocide internationally. Discrimination, hatred, anger. And then you also have, next is resentment. Next is worry. We all have worry. Some people have the magnitude of worry in some people is astonishing. They worry about everything. They worry about their health. They worry about the health of their family members. They worry about losing a job, even though they're still working fine. They're doubtful on their own performance, and they worry about being fired. And they have all kinds of worry. If you have worries, you cannot live peacefully. So you have to understand where the worry comes from, how that arises. By meditation, you see the snake of, every of these is a snake, you know. I've been using the snake as an example. The anger is a snake, resentment is a snake, worry is a snake. All the snakes, 26 of them, are all here. And when we're meditating, if any one of these come up, you get a bamboo stick and push down his head. Don't let it come up. Have you already have a bamboo stick at home when you're meditating? It's easy. You get one from the farm. We have a lot of bamboo sticks. Don't cut though, we have dry ones. Don't try to cut off the bamboos. We have long dry ones. You get to know some of the people who are responsible for the farm. They have dry bamboo stick. You just put it by the side of the meditation stool. And then you start to meditate. And I have a thought of, I have a craving comes up. You get the stick and you push. That snake comes up, opening its mouth at you and try to snipe at you. Then you push that down. No, don't come up. If you don't touch the stick, you don't know. It would bite you. That's how I meditate. When a thought comes up in me, no, I don't want this thought. I want to get this. I'm up to a point now where I don't have to get the stick up. I touched it. Because I know I touched it and the stick comes down. It still comes up. Wait till a time where there's no snakes anymore. You are a bodhisattva. So you have this concealing, the stick of concealing, the stick of deceit. You always deceive people. Next is flattery. You always flatter people. Oh, you look nice today. In your mind, this guy is terrible. Your colleague's doing a lousy job and is in competition with you. He did it wrong and say, oh, that's a good job you performed today. Carry on, carry on. You want him to get fired. It's flattery. Next is arrogance. Next is hostility, envy. Next is parsimony. Parsimony. You know what parsimony is? P-A-R, it spells P-A-R-S-I-M-O-N-Y. Parsimony. Parsimony is being frugal in everything. Not on yourself.